Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul Farrington joined alongside Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia. Jack and Zach will not be with us on today's show. They will be back next week when we record, hopefully for a Tuesday morning episode, as we normally have Tuesday and Thursday on this show. Again, we're closing in on 10,000 subscribers. We're trying really hard to get to that 10,000 mark. And what are we? A little less than 200 away as
we're getting close.
Thursday morning.
We're getting close.
So we're getting there. Just need I think like 180, 190 more. And that'll be awesome. We thank everyone who's been listening this entire time. It is still crazy to us that when we see people in the comment section enjoying the show, it's fun for us when interacting. It just feels like, hanging out with friends a lot of times in the comment section and talking sports, talking a little trash. And we do have a lot of trash talk directed at us, given our primary audience these days. So again, really fun show today. We're going to be talking about some winners, losers, some loving and hating free agent decisions this year for some big brands in the NFL. And we got mailbag coming up a little bit later. Those are always fun to go back and forth on. And big rule changes. A lot of rule changes to the NFL. The game's going to look a little bit different this year. Not completely, but some major plays like the kickoff, completely different. We'll talk about that. A fun show, really, for two guys here. We'll see how far we can take this thing, Ziggy.
We can take this far, Paul.
Yeah.
The fans are going to be listening right now, and they're going to see like an hour 10 at the bottom. Be like, what is Paul talking about?
It's like, how did Paul and Ziggy talk for an hour and 10 minutes on free agent winners and losers here? There's really nothing going on in the NFL season at this point in time, just pro days and stuff. But it's the perfect time for hypotheticals, which I love, and you are sketchy on. So some great producing work by Ziggy, who noticed that we had the nameplates up, and clearly there's no Jack. So we're gonna just get into the show now with the appearance looking a little bit better. The first team that we're going to talk about here, are they a winner or are they a loser? The Atlanta Falcons, who stole our beloved quarterback, stole Kirk from us. They signed a 4-year, $180 million deal with Atlanta. And they made a number of other moves. Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore come to mind here, getting that receiving group a little bit more advanced, some adding in nicely to the big bodies like Drake London and Kyle Pitts, some speedsters. Ultimately, it all comes down to Kirk. So when you look at this contract for Atlanta, Ziggy, did they overspend on an aging quarterback coming off an Achilles, or is this hey, this team can win right now? Great move.
I'm really surprised that Kirk left Minnesota, but I was really surprised the team was this aggressive going after him. Because on the surface, it doesn't look very good. He's 36. He's coming off an Achilles injury. Any Falcons fans listening have had the experience of signing a big deal to an aging quarterback who's not very mobile, who's not very athletic, and seeing how that goes. But the question you sort of have to ask yourself is, what better quarterback is walking through the door?
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of players on rookie deals who are exciting on offense. You have a defense that was better than a lot of people in the national media realized last year. And you get the rare opportunity to sign a guy who's not an MVP quarterback, right? He's probably overpaid a little bit, but a guy who is competitive, who puts you in the driver's seat to win the division. And while the Achilles injury is unfortunate, by all accounts, Kirk's recovering pretty well. It's certainly not what it used to be for athletes. And you signed some nice complementary pieces around him. So while I think there's a risk for this deal to go bad in like 2026 or 2027, the Falcons want to make the playoffs. Right? They want to win the division. They want to do something after this horrific Desmond Ridder experience and all those years of like Matt Ryan not quite being himself ever since the Super Bowl. So I don't mind the deal. I think that Kirk Cousins is about the best quarterback you could possibly hope to get in any realistic free agent or trade scenario. And ultimately, it's not really costing them a whole lot to have him around because, as I said, I don't think there's a realistic upgrade they could pursue.
It's a difficult situation to break down because on one side of it, you have teams like the Falcons who are tired of mediocrity, like you said. Not even mediocrity.
They're tired of being bad.
They're tired of being bad. On the other side of it, the Vikings, when you compare the rosters, a lot of people have been making those comparisons lately. Talented skill positions, defenses that are okay, but if they take a step better with Kirk, could elevate this team to a high level of contention. It's just, which side of it do you fall down on? Do you want the quarterback who might be able to get you there? Probably not, but you'll be in playoff contending status every year. Or do you want to be on the side where the Vikings are, where it's, hey, blow it up. And I think it was just the years of being in the same position year over year for Atlanta and Minnesota. They were just ready to flip it to the other side of that. Atlanta's tried getting a younger quarterback. It didn't work. Go after Kirk. Vikings had Kirk all his time. Had some success, but really didn't work. Go get your guy now. So I do think that you could pick which side of that coin you want to come down on. But for Atlanta, up and down that division, we've talked about this before. You're going against Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, Bryce Young and the Panthers, and the Saints and whatever, or Derek Carr and the Saints. You have the best team now, and all you have to do is get in. It's March Madness right now, right? You're watching these games. All you have to do is get in, and you have a shot. I think for Atlanta, I'm going to call them a winner. I do think they overpaid a little bit, but Kirk Cousins has value, and all you have to do is look at the Las Vegas lines and see 10.5 wins for the Falcons is the over-under.
And if the Falcons are getting 11 or 12 wins, which is not out of the question with the schedule they have, the division they're in, all of that, as much as I hate, saying that teams should make moves based on who's around them, you do have to think if you're like the 2 seed or the 3 seed, hosting one of those bottom feeder NFC teams. I mean, we saw it this year. I know the Packers went on a little bit of a run, but they're not going to be the 6 seed next year. Like, there are a lot of opportunities for you to win a game. Falcons winning a home playoff game. Like, can you imagine how excited the fans would be? And that's well within the possibilities.
Yeah, that's all it is you have to get in. And what I was saying before is, Vegas tells you things. It might not make a ton of sense when you just look if you're a general observer, but if you look deep into the details, Vikings have 6.5 wins, I believe, is their win total. If you flip Kirk Cousins to Minnesota, I bet that the win total also flips. I think they're accounting Kirk Cousins to be worth about 4 wins on the season. Like that's a very good quarterback. If you could get in, like you said, let's say Atlanta's the 4, you're going to be playing probably like the Cowboys or the Eagles. Even if you get the 3, maybe you get a Lions team or something like that. Tough game still, but that's a winnable home playoff game. And go to the second round, see what happens. Just get in. So I do think in terms of the Falcons competing, this was a home run signing. Kirk is a great guy in the locker room, awesome community guy, like perfect teammate. And I do think that he will be able to bounce back close to normal from the injury. I mean, his game doesn't depend on mobility at all. As we know, it depends nothing on mobility. And Falcons got a great O-line. I mean, this is a good offense, good team. Definitely a winner. And you like the Mooney signing, right? Mooney and Rondale Moore. Nice.
Yeah, again, I worry a little bit about how much you're paying Darnell Mooney, but it is just true. The situation he was in Chicago was not great. He was next to DJ Moore, which certainly should have helped him a little bit, but the quarterbacking wasn't great. I remember scouting him coming out of college. I thought this guy really had something, and I
remember you were really high. Really?
Yeah, and again, he hasn't been perfect, but for what you're paying him, what he needs to be is a decent third option next to Pitts in London. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do with a quarterback who can deliver the ball deep, those are the kinds of things he's good for, and some other guys who can draw some attention.
So let's move on here. Before we hopped on the call, we were just going over some winners and losers. And if anyone's listened to the show for a while, you know that I get very caught up in the moment transactions, in the moment decisions, while Ziggy is a little more forward thinking than me, and it's like, all right,
to a fault sometimes, sure, but a lot of times not. Where a trade will happen, I'll be like, oh, let's go, and Ziggy's like, well, actually, in a few years, just I don't know, Paul, slow down a bit. So we hop on this call, and I'm just going through a bunch of teams. I'm like, I love this signing, and Ziggy's like, really, for that amount of money? And as it usually happens, I'm going, wait a second, you know what, that maybe not. So there were 2 teams that jumped out immediately. We'll start with the Dallas Cowboys, who did really nothing in this free agency period, much to the chagrin of many Cowboys fans. People are wondering what's going on for this team where Jerry Jones said, we're all in. And you look up and down the roster, and if I told you, all right, spot the difference, it's okay. You brought in Mike Zimmer and Eric Kendricks. You got the 2016 Vikings coming in to join the Dallas Cowboys here. You lose Tony Pollard, you're losing some linemen on both sides of the ball. Is it if you're a Cowboys fan, Ziggy, would you be patient and say, okay, I'm all right with
building in-house the way we've been doing forever, as it seems? Or are you getting a little impatient saying, like, come on, let's make a move here, like do something?
The thing that frustrates me about the Cowboys, and I think why they found themselves in this tough position, the reason they're not spending is because they have two enormous deals coming up, right? Well, three enormous deals.
Right?
They got
Yeah,
CeeDee
three.
Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Dak Prescott. And they haven't tried to get ahead of any of them, right? They just let the markets keep ratcheting up, ratcheting up, ratcheting up every year. And the game of chicken they're playing with Dak Prescott in particular it strikes me as baffling. Like, you can't let the guy walk. You're going to have to pay him a ton of money next year. Why aren't you trying to get ahead of the market before it develops? And worse, because you keep waiting this and Jerry Jones is doing his thing, you're letting players walk out the door who you can't re-sign because you don't know how much money you have, right? You lost two starters on the offensive line. The edge depth is basically non-existent. Yeah, you replaced Leighton Vander Esch, right, of Eric Kendricks, but it's not like Eric Kendricks is going to be an all-pro. He's going to be a solid player. Stephon Gilmore's gone. He was useful last year. Tony Pollard. Like, a lot of good players have walked out the door, and they don't have obvious replacements. Now you can draft guys, and that might help them, and they're going to need to hit in the draft of the big deals that they have coming up. But why you have an extended CeeDee Lamb when Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are on the horizon is beyond me. So I don't know. I'm frustrated with the fact that it seems like they're worried about these big extensions they have to sign. I applaud their financial scrupulosity for not going all in with the most exciting free agent like I think everyone expects them. But they don't know what they have available to do in free agency, and that keeps hurting them year after year.
So yeah, that's where for Dallas, the way that we were talking about them before we hopped on, I know that you do like building in-house and signing guys to contracts while their value is still a little bit lower than it will be in upcoming seasons. But at the same time, yeah, if you're a Cowboy fan, you're just looking at this team saying, here's a team that can't get past the divisional round. I mean, this year we couldn't even get past the wild card round. And Mike McCarthy's coming out saying, we're definitely improving. We're just not part of the free agent market right now. It's like, all right, when are we going to nail it? Like, it has to be the draft then. And ultimately, for a team that has, a very competitive team, I don't want it to sound like we don't think the Cowboys are good. Dallas has a roster that can easily go to the Super Bowl. It's just when you have the failures year after year after year that they have, you say to yourself, okay, maybe we go and get a receiver, another receiver, or a running back, like some more skill position, build the defense. I think, going and working on the defensive side of the ball in free agency wouldn't have been a bad decision. But ultimately, I mean, this is how the Cowboys have been for a long time. I read an article, I don't know if you saw this, Ziggy, but the Cowboys have spent less cash on their team over the last decade than probably any team in the NFL. If you looked at the numbers, it was 25th in cash spend from 2013 to 16, 32nd from 2016 to 2019, and 30th from 2021 to 2023. And, the author of the article is just saying, does this seem like a team that's all in? So ultimately,
to be fair, I mean, cash spending tells you a little bit, but Kansas City's always near the bottom of cash spending too. So like, you can be competitive, not spending a lot of cash. But what that means is you need to get ahead of deals, which is what Kansas City always does.
Well, Kansas City gets ahead, and they have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, Dak Prescott's very good. He's one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL, which is why I don't understand why they're not locking him up, right? The Chiefs realized what they had, signed Patrick Mahomes to a mega deal that gave them flexibility, and have gotten ahead of free agents or else been ready to let them go. The Cowboys, it seems to me, they can't decide whether they want to go all in or not. And for that reason,
saying they want to go all in. They like yeah. Jones is saying it, and that's why the fans.
Jones can say whatever he wants.
Yeah, he says it all the time.
Go all in.
No, I know he says it all the time. It's just if they're not going to do any of these moves, I can see it being very frustrating for Cowboys.
Yeah, the fans are upset. The fans probably should be upset. And I don't know, it's a little bit of a Ronald Reagan moment. Like, is this team better than they were 1 or 2 years ago? And it's just it's tough to see how this team has gotten better off. They're the same. They're maybe a little worse.
Yeah.
Zach Martin's not going to be young forever. He's 34.
But that's the thing with the Cowboys is that where they're at talent-wise is good enough. It should be good enough. Like that's like sort of why you have to, when McCarthy says, okay, trust the system, essentially is what he's saying. Like there is some sort of, okay, they were hosting playoff games last year. Like they were the 2 seed, right?
Yeah, and they lost to one of the hottest teams in the
And they lost to one
NFL.
of the hottest teams in the league. But it is easy to sit back and say this team can do it. It's just it almost feels mental with the Cowboys to me at this point, where they just get to the big game and fall apart. Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll just have to see how Dallas does during the season. Should be a very competitive team again. You wonder if there's more that's being left on the table. The other team that I came in and was very gung ho about, and Ziggy was like, "Pump the brakes, man, pump the brakes," was the Tennessee Titans. And remember, this is to some degree a Titans podcast, the first team to ever interact with our show, and maybe the only team to ever interact with our show was the Tennessee Titans, who didn't exactly realize that we were making fun of them, but played along.
I know, so we weren't making fun of them, right? That's a little strong. We were playing along.
We were comparing their. We were saying guess the receiver or guess if the player. I'm sorry. Guess if the person is a country singer or a Tennessee Titans wide receiver. There's a little bit of mockery in there, but look, Titans played along. We were very happy about it. In their free agency, they had a lot of big names. They had a lot of names that grabbed your attention in terms of the free agents and players on the trade market. They go and sign Tony Pollard. They sign Calvin Ridley. They sign Chidobe Awuzie. They trade for L'Jarius Sneed. So Titans fans, completely understandable too for what they've been for the past couple of years now, are jacked up about this. They're looking at these big names and saying, all right, we got stars coming in, a young quarterback now with some weapons to work with. But Ziggy, you're saying, or what you told me is slow down. Maybe these deals aren't exactly as beneficial for Tennessee as you might think the players would be.
Yeah, a lot of these deals just baffled me. The first thing I think you have to do is step back and look at the situation the Titans are in. I get that they want to bring talent in, but this team was not particularly good last year. I understand you're worried about the development of your now second-year quarterback, Will Levis. You want to get some guys around him. But some of these decisions are just baffling. Calvin Ridley is going to be paid over the next 2 seasons like a top 5 wide receiver. He's going to get $50 million over the next 2 seasons before big money in 2026 and 2027 starts rolling in. What has Ridley done to justify being a top 5 wide receiver? The dude put up 1,000 yards last year, which is very good. But he's had one special season in the NFL, and that was 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. You get L'Jarius Sneed. Good player, very good player. He was excellent for the Chiefs, but you have to worry about the knee. You have to worry about the fact that one of the smartest teams in the NFL that continues to know when to hold him and when to fold him decided they were letting him walk. You're signing Lloyd Cushenberry to a near top of the market deal. You're bringing in Awuzie and Kenneth Murray and Tony Pollard and Sebastian Joseph Day. Like, you are bringing in a lot of players who were at positions of need for the teams that let them go and decide that these guys weren't it. So bringing in really expensive players whose old teams decided were not worth it at top of the market deals, it baffles me for a team that was not very good to begin with.
I do have a couple questions, and playing devil's advocate to a degree here, Ziggy. But with Calvin Ridley, for instance, yeah, that's probably an overpay. What do we say the out would be essentially
2 years, $50 million,
which is a ton of money for Calvin Ridley. But Justin Jefferson's about to blow up the receiver market. I'm wondering how quickly it is. Let's say Ridley's okay. Let's say he stays healthy, 1,000-yard receiver for the next couple of years. By the time you're entering year 3 of that deal, is there a chance that the receiver market is just through the roof with Jefferson and all these young guys, Jamar Chase getting their mega extensions?
And by the time you're entering year 3 of that deal, he's 33 years old.
He's not 33. He's not 33. He'd be 31 years old. He's 29 right now, right?
Yeah, look, so he's 29. You're right.
No, I get it. He's old.
He'll be 32.
He's older, but I'm just playing devil's advocate with you here. Calvin Ridley might not be. You ideally would want to do this with like a 25, 26-year-old.
The Jaguars sure wanted to keep Calvin Ridley around, right? The only way the Titans were able to get him was by blowing their bid out of the water. And again, this is for a guy who's put together one really special season in the NFL. It's not going to be as bad as this deal, almost certainly. But the deal this reminds me of is the Giants Kenny Golladay deal.
Well, that's like all-time bad.
Yeah, I know that's all-time bad. But you have a guy who's had one really good season in his career, maybe 2 really good seasons. The wide receiver market's terrible. You think we've got to just get whoever the best guy is regardless. So you sign him to a way, way, way expensive deal. And again, like, You can ask, are the Titans going to get better players through the door? Maybe, maybe not. But way overpaying for guys, even when you have cap space, is just not what you want to be doing.
It's the
And the
overpay.
Cowboys,
It's the overpay that's concerning.
it's
Where
the enormous overpay.
I do I don't blame them for going after guys that can help Levis, because Levis, when you watch Levis play, I mean, there's talent there. The dude doesn't suck, but at the same time, you can't trot out what you had last year. And like Ridley, if you get 2 good years of Ridley, let's say Ridley goes for like 1,100 yards each year, it is a big overpay.
That would be the best years of Calvin Ridley's career, best consecutive years.
Is it crazy to think he could go for 1,100 yards next season?
I think it is crazy to think in his age, like 29 and 30 season, that he's going to do better than he's ever done. Like, he's not a consistent guy. He's had injury issues. He's had suspension issues.
I mean, the suspension, but he had 1,000 yards last year.
Again, I think he is an acceptable receiver. I think you can have him as your wide receiver one in an okay offense. But this feels like crap. Why on earth did we let AJ Brown go? Treylon Burks wasn't who we thought he was going to be. We need to sign a guy.
It is a bit of a panic move at the receiver position. Now, with Snead, when it comes to that trade, I don't necessarily think the Chiefs always let guys go at the right time. Like, they let Tyreek Hill go, and so much of it for the Chiefs, to me, comes down to Mahomes just being awesome. I mean, the defense was really good this year as well. But think about Tyreek Hill. Was he really, was he over the hill? No, not at all. I mean, he's been
on offense. I get Tyreek Hill, sure. On defense, particular of cornerbacks, the Chiefs have done a good job.
Okay. Oh yeah, and I mean, actually, yeah. When you look at the Chiefs' cornerback history. Boy, they've nailed McDuffie. They got Peters at the right time. Who's the other guy I'm thinking of? Can't remember. Another stud. They've had stud cornerbacks, and they're great at drafting them too, year after year. But okay, so you're saying more specifically towards the defense.
Yeah, on the defensive side, and in particular, this hasn't gotten a lot of attention. But most weeks last year, L'Jarius Sneed couldn't practice because of inflammation in his knee.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a problem for a while. It continues to be a problem. I get that he played very well. But again, you're signing a guy to a lucrative contract who has a history of knee injuries and keeps missing time due to knee swelling. He's missing time right now. It's still flared up. I don't know. I understand why they're doing it, and I think it's significantly less bad than the Ridley deal. But again, step back and ask yourself, like, at least of Ridley, you can say we're trying to get a guy so we can evaluate our quarterback. This Titans team is not going on a run next year. You do not need to be giving up. Why not? They're in a tough division and they're not very good.
I think that the moves they make, like, they have good players.
I'd much rather have my third round pick than be giving it up to sign a guy to a top of the market deal.
I thought you like Snead to Detroit.
Snead to Detroit makes sense because you already have an elite team there. Like, we have no idea if Levis is any good or not. And you're giving up draft capital that you can use to get, a third round pick's not nothing. Right?
No, I understand. I completely understand.
Starters there?
Yes.
No, I don't like it.
I completely understand where you're coming from. And I think you're probably right. At the same time, if I'm a Titans fan, there's a part of me that's okay with it. And then that's probably why I'm not a general manager. But there's a part of me that wants to compete. And, I'm not necessarily giving up on the division just because, Texans are very good. We could talk a little bit about some of the other AFC South.
I'm just saying the Titans will finish fourth in the division next year.
I would tend to agree with you. I do think that the moves they made are guys, like, if it works out, will have a very, very big impact. You're gambling.
Yeah, 100%. I worry about trading a lot and handing out really big deal contracts. And you ask, what's the effect? Odds on, by far, they're favored to finish last in the division.
No, right? I agree with you. Here. I
understand. I understand. We want to have discussion. I'm just saying this is my least favorite offseason of any team in the NFL.
Of any team in the NFL.
Tell me a worse team. Tell me a team that had a worse offseason.
I guess. Well, what do you think of the Colts, Indianapolis,
so
in division rival here?
Yeah, no, I like going to the Colts here because a lot of people are going to look at the Colts and say they spent a lot of money, but it feels like they didn't get any game changers. What were they doing? The Colts followed the Ziggy strategy, which is when you've got players that are very good and that you want to have around a while, You negotiate extensions with them before the market blows up, not after, right? The Pittman deal, I think, is one of the better deals in free agency this year, right? You've extended him. You've got him at an extremely reasonable contract. He's a foundational guy who you're going to want to have around. I mean, Pittman's making less than Calvin Ridley for the next couple years. And for what, right? The guy's he's a legit wide receiver one. Richardson loves him. So, like, I like the fact that the Colts have been relatively conservative. Now, I get fans want to see him making some bigger splashes in free agency, and I sort of get why. They've been a little bit too conservative. But when you look at free agency deals, most free agency deals end up being a net negative for the team that signs them. So in many cases, sitting there and doing nothing is better than going out and making a big splashy trade or getting a big splashy free agent, because most of the time those deals just don't work out. I'm happy with what the Colts did. They extended a guy who's really good. What more do you want?
It's great listening to you, Ziggy, because you do just think differently than most fans in these situations. And it's not wrong. Like, it's not wrong to have the opinions that you have at all. You have to just see how it plays out. I think most Colts fans who would be listening to you are like, what the hell are you talking about? Because they're dying for moves. And most Colts fans, again, not everyone dives into the numbers the same way. Like you, I mean, you're looking at everything and what you expect in the future.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and let's be clear, the Grover Stewart deal is weird, but set that aside.
But for Colts fans, on the surface level, if you're a Colts fan, you see Danielle Hunter signing with the Texans for less money than you offered him. You see L'Jarius Sneed going to the Titans, Awuzie going to the Titans, two players that were linked to you at a position of need, going to three of them, including Hunter, going to division rivals. That on the surface level does not sit well with Colts fans.
No, but at a certain point, I mean, so you look at the Danielle Hunter deal, right? Danielle Hunter is what? He's sixth among edge rushers. In order to get him, the Colts would have had to pay substantially more. They would have had to pay Danielle Hunter top 3 or top 4 money
but they
at the
offered
position.
More. They offered more money.
No, I know, but I just mean, I get that there's a limit to what you're going to be able to do.
Oh, yeah.
If what you want to do is sign Danielle Hunter to like 28, 29, $30 million a year, that's a bad deal. I'm already a little bit worried about the Texans deal, though I understand why they did it. But I am not in a hurry to hand Danielle Hunter some giant contract.
So when you look at the Colts up and down the roster, are you like that they're taking the approach of, all right, we got a young quarterback anyway, let's build this thing the right way here. It seems like patience is being exerted, maybe to a fault for the fans, but you like it.
Yeah, Ballard is over patient sometimes. I will go in for this. He hoards cap space a little bit too much. But you're 9-8 with Gardner Minshew. Richardson's got the guys around him who will help him succeed, right? You've got Taylor. You've got an offensive line that looked a little bit better last year. You've got Pittman. Panicking and going out and signing big free agents is how you end up where the Giants have been. It's how you end up where the Jets have been, right? Where you're always trying to be the biggest player in free agency, and that just doesn't work.
The Jets, sort of. I mean,
the Jets, you look at their history of signing big money free agents, virtually all of them are busts.
I'm just thinking of all my friends who are Jets fans right now, and they're posting memes saying, do something, Douglas, do something.
Yeah, no, they want Douglas to do something, and then they don't seem to realize what the CJ Mosley deal was. That CJ Mosley deal was the best deal the Jets have signed in a number of years, which is alarming.
Let me ask you, before we move on to the last team here, then we'll get into the rule changes. The Texans. So you're not a huge fan of the Danielle Hunter move?
The thing that I think is interesting I have no idea how the Texans Vikings swap is going to work. They swapped edge rushers. The Vikings went younger. The Texans went more experienced. Both of these teams wanted to move on from their guy and did. That's a weird sort of dynamic. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with Hunter for what the Texans are paying for. My issue would have been going much higher. But the fact is, you can look at the void years. You can look at the fact that there's a lot going on with the contract structure. You can look at the fact that Danielle Hunter, for his injury history, is probably getting overpaid a little bit. But Danielle Hunter, even though he's old, he's a good player. The Texans have the cap space. And what they've done this year is just sign, besides Hunter, they made like their one splashy signing that has a decent chance at busting. But they brought in a lot of fundamentally solid players who can round out the roster. And that's what you want to do when you're in the Texans situation, right? They didn't overplay their hand. They didn't go after every big name free agent on the market. They didn't get involved in the Calvin Ridley sweepstakes. They just said, look, we had a good year. That luck may repeat, it might not, but we want to build a team that's going to last. We think Hunter's got the talent to improve this defensive line. We're willing to take the risk. Otherwise, I think I'm very happy with what they did. And if what you're doing is taking a risk on a player that at least has, when he's healthy, a history of extremely high-level production on a defensive line that was already pretty good, I don't mind that deal for the Texans. Whenever Danielle Hunter's been healthy, I mean, the last healthy season he didn't put up double-digit sacks was 2017, right?
Think about it, too. I know Jonathan Grenard had a great year by all standards, but Danielle Hunter is always the double teamed guy, especially recently. Look at the Vikings defensive line over the past few years. It was just him. I mean, he was a one-man wrecking crew. To pair him on the opposite side as Will Anderson Jr., I mean, pick your poison. I thought it was unbelievable. As good as Grenard is and as great a year as he had, Danielle Hunter is one of those dudes. In like when Hunter's playing his best football, there really aren't a lot of guys that you could say are better than him, other than that top tier where it's like Crosby and Garrett, Watt, those dudes. Hunter's right there. So I think that was a great move, especially
the Joe Mixon deal was terrible.
Joe Mixon,
what they were thinking there.
That felt like more of a, hey, our running back room has sucked for a long time.
Let's bring in one of the worst starting running backs in the NFL.
But he's a big name. Like that's what it was. They're bringing in a name for Mixon. Hey, he's 28 years old. Maybe he's got a little bit left in the tank. But I do like what Houston. I think Houston's in great position to be a Super Bowl contender next year. They're probably going to get, maybe conference championship game is like a lofty goal, but it's good division, AFC South. All right, last team we'll talk about here. And we haven't talked about them a lot lately, especially.
And the fans have been at us in the comments for this, and honestly, fair enough.
Yeah, and fair enough, because we talk a lot about the NFC North on this show, and with our Vikings roots, we talk plenty of Vikings. With the Packers, fan base and viewings, we have to talk Packers. I know people get upset about us talking about the Packers, but to be very clear with everyone, we have to. I mean, we have to talk like that. That's the by far biggest fan base, and we have to.
The Packers are an interesting team,
and they're an interesting team. Yeah, like they
are one of the most interesting teams this offseason.
Yeah, we truly don't say anything. I know some Packers fans recently have been like, "All right, you guys are just gassing up Green Bay for the views." Like, no, we find stories that if Jordan Love says, or if Josh Jacobs says, "I'm going to the Packers because of Jordan Love."
That's a story.
Like that's a story, and we are not happy about it. I do like what Green Bay is doing. We wouldn't say it if we didn't. And obviously the Bears are in a position with Caleb Williams to be and Keenan Allen, all these moves they're making. So the Detroit Lions have sort of flown under the radar. And we have a good friend, Tom Monroe, who listens to the show, talks to us, big Detroit Lions fan. I'm sure Tom will hear this when it comes out. Tom is always texting me because we reference the Packers Lions game a lot on Thanksgiving. He's like, just so you know, like, we didn't get blown out that game. And he texted me today. He's like, I think you need to put this in your background, the scoreboard of the game, the box score. He's like, just so you know, we didn't get blown out. And it's like, Tom, I rewatched the game this morning. It's like, you were down 23-6 at halftime. Like you were convincingly beaten in that game. But I guess that's just something we fundamentally disagree on. The Lions, though, quietly having a really, really good offseason for a team that already should have gone to the Super Bowl. What was the biggest weakness for Detroit heading into free agency, Ziggy?
Well, the biggest weakness, I mean, you have to say it's defensive tackle and cornerback.
Yeah, and when you go and look at, DJ Reader, welcome to Detroit. Carlton Davis, welcome to Detroit. Like they've made some. I think Marcus Davenport too didn't really play a lot for the Vikings last year. Welcome to Detroit. This team has done a lot to try and improve. Who do you say? There's another quarterback, right? Amik Robertson.
Yeah, Amik Robertson. Again, he's not going to light the world on fire, but he's a guy you can put out there who won't get humiliated.
Yeah. They had and they just had a ton of guys who were humiliated last year. And then on the offensive side of the ball, and we're leaving some guys out here. Of course, we have to. But Zeitler, bringing in Kevin Zeitler from the Ravens, that offensive line. This is something Tom's talked about too. That offensive line in Detroit. I mean, holy crap! Like this team is really good everywhere. There aren't a lot of holes. And what I loved about Detroit is they addressed the biggest issues, and now they have a team that. Look, we talk about the Packers a lot, but Detroit is right there as an NFC North contender and a Super Bowl contender. We both like it. I'm speaking correctly for you, right?
Oh, yeah. I really like what they did this offseason. And in particular, I think this is one of those technical things that fans don't necessarily like to listen to, but is important. Their navigating of the guard market was masterful. I mean, you look at what guys were signing for. I mean, Lions fans, they were upset when Jonah Jackson left, hopefully until they saw he was getting signed for $17 million a year. Robert Hunt went for $20 million. Kevin Dotson, $16 million. Meanwhile, Graham Glasgow is a very good player, by the way. It's just sitting back there at 6. You're getting Kevin Zeitler. He wasn't in the top 10 guards signed this offseason in terms of money.
I mean, that's
right.
It's
a 1-year prove-it deal for one of the best guards in the NFL. I get that he's old, but this is a guy who can really play. And the Lions, after having some real success last year, it's so easy, and we've seen this. You have a year of success. You push all your chips in for the very next year. It doesn't work out, and now you're screwed. This Lions team with Brad Holmes is smart. They're counting on the draft. They're getting deals, right? They're not getting out. They didn't get the best cornerbacks. They got the guys who they felt like were the best value and fit the best. I really like that the Lions are showing some restraint, and they're making real additions, right? They're not doing what the Cowboys are doing and just sitting back and getting worried about the Jared Goff extension. They're saying, no, we want to compete. We've got a great team. We're going to add guys. But we're going to be smart about it. And we're still going to focus on the draft. That is how you build a team that is competitive for years on end. That's how they do it in Green Bay. And it's worrying to see Detroit taking this up. I mean, you talk about guys and teams that constantly win free agency. Detroit was always a free agency winner with 10 mega free agents, all of whom sucked. It's a different time in Detroit, and I really like how they're operating it, even if it makes me nervous.
No, they are one of the smartest teams in the league right now. I'm pretty sure at the combine, a lot of from what I heard, the people that I work with, a lot of people are impressed by the Detroit front office, even Campbell as well. I think that's just a great combination of players who run through a brick wall for their coach. Smart general manager, and players who are motivated. They've done a phenomenal job, and this team is setting up really nicely. That's a great point you made too about Dallas could have they could have been like Dallas. They could have sat back and said, "Hey, it's a really good team. Like we're not going to go out. We're not going to do anything crazy here."
We're going to have to give Amon-Ra an extension. We're going to have to give Jared Goff an extension. We're going to have to there's lots of players they could be worried about extending.
Yeah, let's hit the draft and go forward with this team. No, I think they addressed it really nicely, and that's what Cowboys fans are probably sitting back asking for, saying, why can't we do something like this? So Detroit, and they're probably going to nail the draft again because their drafts are just awesome.
Cool.
So
I'm not so sure about that, but this is the thing, right? They're putting themselves in a position where they can take the best players, take the best shot they have, and then if it hits, it hits, and if it doesn't, just do it again next year.
Is there a more complete team in the NFL than the Detroit Lions right now?
Probably San Francisco,
but
the Lions are right up there.
Yeah, and they can probably match San Francisco. If they go get another receiver, if they nail a receiver in the draft.
No, I want to see Josh Reynolds come back. I think that's important.
No, he's gone. I think
did he just
a couple hours ago?
Oh, yeah, that's on. Oh, you're right. The Broncos picked him
just
up.
A couple. This is very recent news. Yes.
Yeah, but still, you're right. They need to add another receiver or two. But yeah, just the shift in just a couple years for all the people who are fans of teams that suck. What happened to Detroit can happen to you if you just get the right people. They're smart. They're careful. They're making good decisions. They're not overspending. They're going to be competitive. I can't believe it, but it's looking sunny in Detroit in the middle of winter.
The new city, the Motor City, baby. They're back. Okay, let's move on to We were going to talk a little Bears Packers, but I think that was pretty good.
No, we'll keep talking about it as the draft gets closer.
The new rules. So there were some big changes to the NFL rule book this year. We're not going to go over all of them. We probably won't even go into much detail here, but the big ones were obviously the kickoff change. They're taking on the XFL style. I'm not going to get into every single detail, but essentially still kicking off from the 35-yard line, but the kickoff team is going to start, and Ziggy, correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, but the kickoff team will start, all their gunners on the 40-yard line, the opposing 40-yard line. And I believe that the other team will have their players between the 30 and 35-yard line. So players are only like 5 to 10 yards apart max at the start of a kickoff here. And you can't start rushing until the ball is caught or hits the ground.
Yeah, and if it's in the field of play, you have to return it.
Yeah, and
So basically what you're doing, and this is going to be really interesting to watch, and we saw it in the XFL, you're basically running a real deal offensive play.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this isn't good for some of the return specialists who are really guys of elusive open field speed, but expect to see guys like Saquon, like Deebo Samuel, because you can really get yards of a play like this. If you block well and have a guy who can get through in a difficult situation, guys of really good vision who are really strong. Like you've seen in the XFL, we saw crazy handoffs and pitches. Like coaches are going to get a chance to be creative, but you're running a real deal play and teams have to do it. We're going to get a chance to see a lot of creativity. And I think with the reduced injury, you might be seeing guys like Jamar Chase taking these.
No, you will not. Stop.
No, I seriously think teams are going to put their real players in because look, if the risk of injury is lower, which it is, and putting the right guy back there can make a difference of 5, 10, 15 yards.
Maybe you're going to take crucial moments, but you're not putting Jamar Chase back there for it.
I think you are. I think you're putting Saquon back there every time it's kicked off. You're going to see this. Watch.
I guarantee you that Saquon Barkley will not be returning kicks this year.
I think he might not start, but teams are going to realize the injury risk is lower.
You're GM. I think that's what I'm realizing here is you have the great brain for the GM, but if
the injury risk on this it's not substantially different than any other play because you're not getting the running starts that constantly got guys hurt. If you're not going to play Saquon here, you shouldn't play him on any play.
I still don't want. I mean, look, they're still running from the 40-yard line. It's safer than having guys at a dead sprint from the other 35-yard line, but they're still
guys run into blockers from 10 or 15 yards out on regular plays.
It's still
like oh man, Micah Parsons is at the middle linebacker spot. Do you think that this is a higher impact play than like 2nd and 3? You're not taking Saquon out on 2nd and 3 because he might get hurt by a linebacker. I'm just going to reduce.
All right. I promise you.
I'm right about this. You're not. You're going to see this.
The coaches will get a third challenge now. All you have to do is one of the first two. You don't have to hit both. I know. I don't care. Zach seemed very excited about that for some reason.
The trade deadline moving now. That's exciting.
Yeah, we're just going to hit 2 more of these here. The trade deadline is a week later. I mean, please go ahead. You said you wanted to talk about this.
I think the trade deadline should be substantially later, actually. But the later you move a trade deadline, the more exciting trades you will get because teams will have a better idea of where they stand. The losers will be more encouraged to lose. The winners will be more encouraged to win. So the later we push the trade deadline, I was hoping it would get to week 10, but I think it could in future years get to 10 or even 11. The more you will see big name players move at the trade deadline.
I can't remember off the top of my head when quarterbacks went down last year, but just think about the high number of quarterback injuries that were occurring last season. If you have someone, further back the trade deadline is, the more activity.
Deshaun Watson got hurt week 9.
Deshaun Watson
Daniel Jones got hurt week 9.
Joe Burrow was he was later, I think, but
yeah, but
high impact guys.
Yeah, the Texans had that was one of their freaky injury weeks. It's the later the trade deadline is in the season. Goddard suffered that bad injury. The later it is in the season, the more impactful trades you will see. And as fans, we should always be in favor of
And it's not like fantasy football where you have one-year teams. This isn't going to be a scenario where you have guys trading like superstars and things like that. Fantasy football trade deadlines make sense, but this for the NFL, I guess what I said made absolutely no sense because obviously the NFL is far different from fantasy football, but you get what I mean. The last one we'll talk about, we don't really have to talk about this at all, but the hip drop tackle? Was
Yeah, I will say this. There's a reason why, even though the owners were unanimously in favor, the NFLPA was really worried. It's tough to play defense.
hard
This
now.
is
It's
adding
really hard.
another non-reviewable, subjective, tough to understand call. Like, what is swiveling?
I
That's
know.
going to be a thing.
I know.
I get that the type of play results in injury more often, but I will just say this. There are going to be at least two critical moments next year where a hip drop tackle call that's questionable or difficult, or where you look at it and say, what was the guy supposed to do? Decides the game. It is just going to be roughing the passer all over
Well,
again.
and the fact that it is the swivel hip drop tackle that was banned, not all hip drop
Yeah,
tackle.
what is a
Oh
swivel?
no!
I've
So
read the
here's
rule.
what it is. It says it's a foul if the player uses the following technique to bring a runner to the ground: A, grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms, and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and/or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. I like, it's hard to take down guys like Travis Kelce, these big tight ends. You're protecting a lot of star players here, and that's something obviously the NFL wants to do is keep guys healthy, especially the players you want to see in these games. It is hard for defenders now with there are so many rules about what
No,
they
and
can
this
and
is the
can't do.
thing is if the rules were easy to understand and enforced consistently, defensive players could stand it. The problem is you start to get when you're playing a sport, the one thing you can't have at the professional level is hesitation or getting in your head. And when you've got really tricky, subjective, not the swivel version, like type rules, it can be very hard as a defensive player to play on instinct, which is what you want to be doing.
Mhm.
So I understand why it's in place. I'm hopeful it's not going to be as bad as I think, but it's tough.
And the last thing we'll talk about here, Christmas Day. The NFL decided to play on Christmas Day, which is a Wednesday this year.
Don't they have a game every single day of that week?
I haven't looked. Is that what's going on?
I believe they do.
You know, you know who the loser of this is?
Who's the loser?
The NBA. Huge, huge loser from the end. Like everyone knows NFL's king, and this is just the king going for the throne here. Where, yeah, it's a great move from the NFL to play on Christmas Day. Last year, I didn't watch a single NBA game. Usually, it's just on in the background on Christmas in my house, but last year it was all the football games. And you know what's actually pretty funny is I know that I'm more of a football fan too than most people. My family's more football oriented than a lot, but like, we had the games on all day, and people were stopping and watching. Like, the NFL rules, and I think this was just a great move from them again.
We are going to have a crazy recording schedule. So in the 10-day period around Christmas, there will be games on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's 8 out of 10 days there's going to be an NFL game.
Christmas on a Wednesday is fantastic too, because you get Christmas Eve and Christmas basically off. No one's going into work Thursday and Friday, or no one wants to go into work on Thursday and Friday after Christmas. It's a perfect time to have Christmas Day around with the weekends around it. But yeah, I thought it was a good move from the NFL. It'll be a fun week. I mean, look, for us it's a lot of work, but yeah, we're not recording on Christmas anyway. Like unless something insane happens, we're probably just gonna enjoy the holiday.
They're going to schedule the Packers for Christmas.
They'll have like Packers Vikings or like Packers Cowboys on Christmas Day, and we'll be like, oh, all right, we probably could do like a 10-minute reaction. So what?